My name is Olivia Harper. He said he needed space, so I gave him some, specifically the empty closet where his stuff used to be. The first thing people notice about our apartment is the light. How it pours through the corner windows in the late afternoon and dusts the hardwood like gold dust. It made everything look softer, like mistakes could be softened too. I loved that light. I used to stand in the kitchen while the kettle screamed and watch it pool on the rug where his shoes sat by the door. His sneakers, his dress shoes, the messy ballad of a life that fit together without thinking. It sounded small, but it was home. Marcus was the kind of man who made ordinary mornings feel cinematic. He had this habit of humming under his breath while drying dishes, a stupid rhythm he claimed he'd learned from a jazz record he pretended to own. He read the paper out loud sometimes, like he was trying to practice for a life of opinions. "Do you think we should get the bigger coffee table?" he asked once, and I remember looking up and feeling the future unspool, as if it were a sweater we were casually knitting together. We moved in together because it made sense. He had a job that kept him late in the city. I had clients who liked punctuality. Our schedules fit around each other, like puzzle pieces that never forced the fit. His clothes lived on the left side of the closet, shirts folded like little promises, jeans hung on hangers like neat reasons to stay. My side was chaos and color and the perfume bottles I never used. I liked the division. It made us distinct and trusted. "Olivia," he said one night, a hand in his hair that usually meant he was about to confess something small and ridiculous. "Can we talk?" His voice had that soft tremor that used to make me sit straighter. "About what?" I asked, pouring a second glass of wine, because I liked the idea that everything might be braced by liquid courage. He looked at me like he was searching for the right shape of the words. I need some space. That's all. I can't be everything for you right now." It wasn't dramatic. There was nothing sudden, no slammed doors. He said it like a doctor delivering an ordinary diagnosis. He said it like a man who'd rehearsed it in the mirror and decided to make it sound gentle. "Space," I repeated. The word felt too small for the way my chest tightened. "Space-like." "Just time," he said. "Time to breathe. Time to figure out what I want. It's not you. It's me." He always used the line like they taught him in movies. The old script. "I need to be alone for a while." I laughed because I didn't know if I could breathe or speak. "You can have the balcony. I'll move the plants. I mean, space," he said, almost embarrassed by how pathetic he sounded. "Not this apartment. I'll stay over at Sam's. I'll call. I'll be fine." He left his key on the counter like a casual gift. The key sat there, small, metallic, the shape of a life paused. I could have taken it. I could have shoved it into the drawer where I kept requisites and receipts. Instead, I watched him walk out and the door close behind him, and the flat felt too loud in the silence that followed. The first week was the kind of silence that predicts a storm. He sent small messages, a heart emoji at odd hours, "Thinking of you," with 3 dots after it, calls he didn't finish. I kept his tea mug in the sink because it belonged to him. Habit rifts are hard to break. If I'm honest, part of me believed space meant recalibration, a pause, a breath, a new beginning made better by absence. I imagined a romantic return, redemptive in its very dysfunction. Then other messages started arriving, subtle at first. A name that cropped up on his social media I didn't recognize, blurred photos from his phone of a girl at a rooftop bar, a comment thread where he'd joked about being single for now. I found the name in the way women find things in drawers. You don't look for it at first, then suddenly there it is, blinking like a neon sign. I confronted him over a coffee when we finally met up, in the kind of neutral public place lovers use when they've started pretending everything is casual. "Who is she?" I asked. Not accusatory, just a question, the way a patient asks a doctor about a diagnosis. "It's nothing," he said, and his eyes darted away fast enough to make me think of a kid stealing cookies. "It was just a thing. A woman at work. It's not important. It's not important," I repeated, like a teacher testing a child. There was the briefest pause where the light in the cafe turned the world the color of his hair, and in that sliver I saw how little he weighed the word promise. "You said you needed space?" "I do," he said, "but He stopped and the sentence died, unable to find purchase. "You left because you needed space," I said. And you used that space to make room for someone else. He looked guilty the way a man looks when he gets caught wearing someone else's jacket. I didn't mean for it to. But intention is a small thing compared to consequence. The clock hands marched on whether he meant to or not. I went home and the apartment felt like a stage set where props had been removed to suggest meaning. His side of the closet was unnaturally neat. Something about the order suggested a hurriedness. Shirts hung straighter than before, as if he had been packing with the obsessive calm of someone making a plan. At 3 in the morning, after the hollow of my pillow had echoed all his small apologies and the silence of his promises, I slipped into the closet and ran my hands along the hangers. I touched a shirt he had worn to my sister's wedding, felt the place where he'd left a thread of grass in the hem. It was the kind of tenderness that kills familiarity with a life you thought you owned. You want space. I whispered into the dark, imagining him somewhere else, telling someone he loved them. Fine. There is a slow kind of revenge that doesn't need fireworks. It needs patience. Like a plant whose roots you don't pull out, but which you let wither until the house remembers it was always yours. I paced my decisions like a director blocking a scene. If he wanted space, I would give him a version of it he could live in. The one whose edges were visible and public and impossible to ignore. I started small. I archived his clothes with ritual. Not thrown out, never that. I folded every shirt he had with the care of someone who is cataloging evidence. I labeled boxes with dates and small notes. June, promise to call. July, Saturday brunch, things that read like obituaries of the tiny kindnesses he'd pledged. For the things that belonged to both of us. The record player, the lamp he'd insisted we buy. I left them where they were, because my point was not to erase the past but to frame it, to show how the emptiness arrived by design, not accident. He texted me, twice a day at first, and then less. Are you okay? He asked, when I had put away a sweater he loved. I miss you, he said later, like a card retrieved from the bottom of a drawer. I answered with honesty disguised as ordinary life. I'm fine. I wrote, working late, we'll talk. When he tried to come over one weekend. Because that is what men do when they realize absence is an echo they don't like living with, I told him calmly. In the same voice you used to tell a server your order. That I'd be out that day. The silence in those messages mattered as much as the replies. I made a schedule of absence as meticulous as a budget. The revenge wasn't about pettiness. It was like editing a film's, trimming what doesn't serve the story until only truth is left. I held space in public too. I went to his favorite coffee shop and sat at the table where he'd proposed they try that new roast, and I ordered 2 muffins with an exaggerated sweetness. I let acquaintances notice me laughing by myself, the kind of small defiance that insists the narrative will not be written by the absent. I posted a photo to my feed later that week, nothing explicit, just a frame sunlight on the hallway used to walk down, the caption. The sun comes in whether we notice or not. People liked it. It was the kind of message that reads like closure. He called one night and I could hear the city in the background, the same city that had once felt like our map. Can we talk? He said, softer now, as if the word had been made thin by too much use. Please, I think I made a mistake. That's funny, I said. My voice did not shake. I think I didn't. Silence, and then a plea. Olivia. You wanted space, I said. I gave it to you? My words were not cruel. They were a report. There's an empty closet where your things used to be. There are moments in life when the language matters less than the image. I could have told him I'd packed his shirts. I could have explained the boxes, the donations, the careful photographs I'd taken for myself. But I chose the image, the closet, the absence, the neat square of emptiness that framed the fact of his leaving. When he came back, I was not there to meet him with a broken heart. I met him with measured steps. He opened the closet, and it was exactly as I had told him, hollowed out, like a stage that had been struck after a performance. I watched him search for a face in the empty space, for the thing he'd made disappear in order to claim a new life. You did this, he said, incredulous, like a man who'd been robbed but couldn't quite name the loss. I did, I said. You asked for space. He laughed then, a nervous sound. Olivia, I didn't mean for. You used the word? I said. You used it like a shield. I decided to put it in the place you left. There's a peculiar humility in telling someone exactly what you made room for. The revenge I chose was not a spectacle, it was a mirror. I wanted him to see the geometry of what he'd done, the way absence looks when someone else arranges it. I wanted him to stand in a space that bore witness. "You owe me an explanation," he said, desperate now, like someone who is trying to barter for a history he'd already undervalued. "You gave me one," I replied. "You told me you needed space. This is the space." My voice was calm, which was the part that stung the most. It was the voice of someone who had rebuilt their ankles after a fall. He left slower than he had before. The door clicked, and the apartment breathed. For a moment I felt triumphant, not in a petty way, but in the precise satisfaction of justice done. It wasn't about humiliation, it was about clarity. The invisible things that make a life together were now visible in their absence. Months later, friends asked if it had been harsh. "You mean you gave him the closet?" my sister asked, incredulous over wine. "I gave him the consequences of his sentence," I said. "He wanted space. I gave him room to live with the result." People asked if I missed him. Nostalgia is a clever liar, it softens edges until you forget why you were hurt. But I'd kept the labels on the boxes, little notations that read like chapter headings. Sometimes at night I would take a photo of the empty closet and pin it to my phone, not as triumph but as a talisman, proof that I had not vanished in the quiet, that I had preserved myself in the exact geometry of what he'd asked for. There are kinder ways to end a story. There are stories of forgiveness and reconciliation and the triumphant reunion where both people have learned to be better. This is not that story. This is a story about the horizontal truth of ordinary lives people leave, sometimes with good intentions, sometimes with selfish ones. Space can become a sanctuary or a doorway. When I think back, I don't feel proud. I feel steady. I feel a quiet ache with the edges sanded off. The empty closet taught me how to set boundaries that look like architecture rather than battle. It taught me how to be precise in my own defense. I sold some of his jackets, donated a crate of his old records, and kept one sweater that still smelled faintly of the rain that fell the night we first kissed. It lies folded now on my shelf, not because I wanted a memento, but because I wanted his memory contained, not sprawling. The last time he texted me, months later, he sent a single photograph: an open door, sunlight pouring through a small apartment, shoes by the door. No words. For a second, a small, ridiculous second, I felt the old tug. Then I remembered the way he had chosen a word over me. I sent back a photo of the empty closet, lit by afternoon, the hangers spaced like a quiet measure. No caption. No flourish. Just what had been asked for, given back. He deserved to stand in that space and feel it. Not because I wanted him to suffer, but because I wanted the truth to have weight. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is the one that is simply honest. I closed the bedroom door and the light in the hall pooled like forgiveness that had been earned slowly, like money saved for a long trip. The apartment felt like mine again, not because I removed him, but because I had decided what to keep. He said he needed space. I gave him the space. And for the first time in a long time, the apartment was exactly the shape I needed.